What's up, everybody? Today I want to do something a little different. I watch a lot of movies and TV every month, but I only have time to make videos about a few of them. So I wanted to make a little summary of everything I watched this month and do short reviews for all of them. So this is everything I watched in July. I got this idea from one of my favorite YouTubers, Karsten Runquist, so go check him out for some other great videos. If you enjoy this video, remember to like and subscribe, and check out my channel for more content like this. Alright, now let's get into it. To start off this month, I watched Stranger Things 4 Volume 2. I already made a video about it, so you can go check that out if you're interested. Next, I finished watching all 3 seasons of Barry on HBO Max. I'm honestly kind of disappointed I got through it so quickly and I can't watch it anymore, but it's such a great show that I could not stop watching it. What I love most about Barry is that it's the antithesis to a show like Breaking Bad, which is one of my favorite shows of all time, where Barry strives not for an escape from his everyday life, but he strives for the normal everyday life itself. It's kind of hard to separate all the seasons since I kind of watched them all at once, but Season 3 that just came out this year goes in a very new direction and feels quite different. We get a lot more depth for all of these amazing characters, and the relationships between them are so much more complicated than before. The dry humor keeps getting better every season, and Bill Hader's direction was very impressive too. The way the last episode was shot specifically was brilliant. The whole last episode is insanely good, but the way it's shot and the performances are what really bring it home. I have a lot I could say about Barry, but I have a sneaking suspicion that I'm going to be talking about it again in my inevitable favorite TV shows of 2022 video at the end of the year. And even though the show isn't over yet, I'm still giving all of these first 3 seasons a 10 out of 10. Then I saw the Elvis movie. I already wrote a long rant on Letterboxd about all the things I don't like about this movie, but to sum it up, this movie is edited like a movie trailer, and the cuts and pacing are so ridiculous it made me feel like I was going to have a seizure. It's supposed to show the craziness of Elvis's life, but there is no point in the entire movie where we get a chance to slow down, not even in the beginning, making this comparison have no impact and completely wasting Austin Butler's performance. Butler does a phenomenal job as Elvis. I just wish they actually gave him a chance to act in a scene longer than 10 seconds. I know a lot of people really love this, but the editing choices are really just not my style. If there's one thing I can say about this movie, it's that it's definitely memorable, but considering I found it so hard to sit through the entire thing, I don't think I'll be revisiting it anytime soon, so I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10. Then I watched the end of The Boys Season 3. Once again, I already made a video on it, so you can check that out up here. Next, I watched Hustle on Netflix. It took me a while to get around to this, but I heard a lot of people talking it up when it first came out, which I found very surprising. Since 2019, Adam Sandler has become one of my favorite actors, so I went into Hustle with somewhat high expectations. It's an enjoyable film, but it was a little disappointing for me. For the most part, it's a very straightforward sports film and doesn't really do anything to break from the mold. I'm not a fan of basketball or really any sports in general, so a sports movie has to have some really compelling characters to make me care, and Hustle didn't quite get there. Seeing Adam Sandler in dramatic roles is always a treat, but he didn't have as much room to shine and ended up feeling a lot like his character in Grown Ups, which is not a good thing, by the way, if that wasn't obvious. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Then I went to the theater to see Jurassic World Dominion. Seeing this like a month after it came out was a great decision because me and my friend Logan were the only ones in the entire theater. In fact, they didn't even remember to turn the lights off for our showing, and if it was any other movie, I might have actually cared. This is definitely the type of movie you have to watch with friends and relentlessly make fun of the entire time, because that's about all the enjoyment it has to offer. Even though the last Jurassic World movie sucked, it seemed like this one had a lot of potential for fun dinosaur action in the real world, but somehow they even messed that up. The parts with the dinosaurs in the real world were actually really cool, but they were few and far between because instead of making a cool dinosaur movie, they decided to make a live-action version of A Bug's Life. They also brought back the characters from Jurassic Park so that they could do absolutely nothing. But thank God they did, because this movie would be nothing without Jeff Goldblum. Jurassic World Dominion is a 2 out of 10, bumped up to a 3 because of Jeff. Then I watched a few Kubrick films for the first time, starting with Full Metal Jacket. I really liked my Letterboxd review on this one, but basically my thoughts were that the intent behind the message is exactly what I want to see from a war movie, but the execution didn't do it justice. The beginning and end of Full Metal Jacket are perfect in my opinion, but the middle has a lot less character to it. Everything in the training camp was brilliant, with Vincent D'Onofrio probably giving his best performance that I've seen. Since the whole point of the movie is to show how war changes the mentality of the soldiers, the ending wraps that up in the best way possible. But other than that one scene where they're being interviewed about their thoughts on the war, the middle third of the movie didn't have enough to it for me. Like most of Kubrick's films, this is one I'll probably have to rewatch at some point, but for now it's a 7 out of 10. Then the day after, I watched Eyes Wide Shut. This is without a doubt my favorite film of Kubrick's that I've seen so far. Unlike his others, I feel like I was able to fully take in everything he was saying here, and by the end I was left in utter shock. This isn't a horror movie by any means, but somehow it's one of the scariest films I've ever seen, especially once you consider the real-world implications that it has. Tom Cruise continues to impress me as I dive deeper into his filmography, and this is also my favorite Nicole Kidman performance too. This is probably the most anxious I've ever been watching a movie, and that's saying something because thrillers are one of my favorite genres. I don't want to say too much else about this though, in case you haven't seen it. I would absolutely recommend it, just be prepared to be completely shook by the time it's over. Right now I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10, but it's one of those that I'll probably go up to a 10 on rewatch. Next I watched a film clearly heavily inspired by the work of Kubrick, Minions: The Rise of Gru. I honestly don't even know what to say about this movie since I'm clearly not in the target audience of 10-year-old kids and their moms. The first Minions movie is pretty awful, but somehow this sequel isn't completely irredeemable. The animation on all of these movies is nothing compared to any of the other animation studios right now, but this one is at least the best looking of the Despicable Me movies. The plot makes zero sense, and if I even tried to describe it, I'd probably get a migraine. But I think that might actually work in the Minions' favor, because they are like little agents of chaos that thrive in confusion. And even though the Minions usually employ the lowest brow humor known to man, there were some decently funny moments here. It's still extremely mid, but in terms of illumination standards, that's actually pretty good, so I'll give it a 5 out of 10. In the same day, I finally finished Season 3 of The Umbrella Academy, which was a huge disappointment. The first 2 seasons of this show are really fun, and for how confusing time travel plots usually are, I think The Umbrella Academy found a really fun way to explore it in Season 2. The biggest issue with this new season is that it has been like 3 years since the last one came out, and it is impossible to remember what's going on without rewatching it, which I did not do. Since there are so many characters and so many plot lines, there are a lot of things to keep track of in the first few episodes. It felt like I was playing catch-up the whole time, and that still wasn't enough because this is one of the most confusing seasons of television I've ever watched. Even once I started to remember what happened before, all of the new stuff was even more complicated. It was so hard to tell why any of the characters were doing anything and what their motivations were. They went for this weird Flashpoint-esque storyline where none of the Umbrella Academy were ever born, which is an interesting idea, but it seems like the only way to fix it is to go back in time and undo what they did before, which many of the characters bring up. But if that's their goal throughout the whole season, then all these things they're trying to do in the present day don't even matter because their plan is to undo all of it anyway. Everything just feels so disconnected, and all of the characters are doing different things that don't make sense, and none of the build-up was worth it in the end. There's still a lot of charm peeking through the messiness that was present in the previous seasons, so there were still some things to enjoy at least. I still like most of the characters, especially Klaus, who is great every time he's on screen, and that dance sequence in the first episode is brilliant. I wish there was more of that. I also like the way they handled Victor's coming out plotline. It was really mature and well done, and I was surprised to see something like that from Netflix. But I feel like this show was designed to fail from the way Netflix just threw it out in the middle of Stranger Things releases with no marketing, which is really disappointing because I liked this show a lot before. I hate to say it, but this is another 3 out of 10 for me. Oh, and I'm officially going to be starting a tier list for the worst characters ever. So for my previous videos, we have Mike from Stranger Things, and Todd from The Boys. And now we have Allison from The Umbrella Academy, who is just utterly horrible in the second half of this season. If you have any other suggestions for the list, let me know in the comments. Then I watched Thor Love and Thunder. I know I've made a lot of Marvel reviews on my channel, but I don't think Love and Thunder deserves its own video because I quite honestly just don't care enough about it. As much as I like Thor Ragnarok, I just didn't have much anticipation for this one. I think at this point, I'm just getting tired of all the new Marvel stuff releasing so often, and it's hard to keep being interested. Like, I haven't even watched Miss Marvel yet at all. I actually like Taika, but this movie is proof that you can absolutely have too much of a good thing. There are so many unfunny jokes in this movie. It's not even that they get old after being repeated, it's just that they weren't really funny in the first place. Obviously, it's fine for people to enjoy this kind of humor, but it's not my thing at all. The plot feels like two movies in one, and neither of them get enough focus. First, we have Natalie Portman's return as the mighty Thor, which could have worked, but I don't think she fit the tone of this movie very well, because she's not really a comedic actress. Christian Bale is great as Gore, but he feels like he's in the wrong movie. He's about as serious of a character as you can get, and putting him in the same movie with giant screaming goats feels like a huge mistake. I don't think every movie needs to be serious as hell with no comedy, but the two halves of this movie are polar opposites that clash the whole time. One thing I think this movie deserves a lot of credit for is the visuals. It's very vibrant and colorful, and the black and white of the Shadow Realm is a great contrast. They also introduced the best live-action Thor costume so far, only to replace it with the ugliest live-action Thor costume so far 5 minutes later for absolutely no reason. I did like how the movie ended, but ending a review of a low-tier Marvel project by saying I'm excited to see what will happen next is getting tiresome, and I really need something new and exciting to happen soon. This movie is mostly harmless fun, but it is also kind of annoying and cramped, so I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. And then the last thing I watched this month was Big Fish. I haven't seen all of Tim Burton's movies, but he's made some classics, and I think this might just be one of them for me now. It's just such a great story with so many lovable characters and moments. It has such an interesting outlook on life and the way that we view our own legacy and that of our family too. Ewan McGregor was great in this movie, and I loved a lot of the side characters too, like Danny DeVito and Steve Buscemi. This was a great note to end the month on, and I know I'm going to be revisiting this one at some point. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Alright, so that's everything I watched this month, and I had a lot of fun making this video, so I'd love to keep doing these. Let me know down in the comments your favorite thing you watched this month and any other recommendations you might have for me. Other than that, remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video and want to see more like it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.